Hi, everyone. Welcome to the final session, the student track, which is all about setting up a successful practicum with Sarah Morton and Jenny Perez, both BCPAs and graduates of Assumption University. And I would just like to shout out and thank Leo Christo and all the fine folks at Assumption University for sponsoring these sessions and making them available at the conference. So thank you so much, Leah, for being here and also for sponsoring and partnering on this important initiative. I don't know if you want to say, if you want to jump in. No. Yeah.
I'm delighted to have this opportunity and to see such wonderful, friendly faces who are eager to advance the field by really being on the cutting edge of what it takes to now really advance professionally in this space. So I welcome the conversation, and I'm going to try and keep myself silent so I can listen from your experience and not share from mine.
Okay, and just to remind people how this is structured today, we will listen to two students who have gone through the practicum experience, and this is really for the benefit of your learning. So they'll go ahead and share their experience, and then we'll do a Q&A, and then we can also talk about next steps for students who will be setting up practicums in the next year or two and what we're planning on doing. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jenny Perez. Jenny?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny Perez. I'm actually in Yakima, Washington. And for those of you that don't live in Washington State, it's in the middle of the state. And so my background was not in healthcare, and I was a stay-at-home mom. And about 4 years ago, I decided I really, just due to like my own personal health issues and my son's health issues, I found myself navigating the healthcare system a lot, all the time. And I thought, wow, is there a way that I could do this professionally? I want to be more educated in this area. I don't really want to be a nurse. I don't really want to be a physician. I didn't want to go back and do that kind of clinical. I didn't want to be a clinical, psychologist or social worker. I was like, how do I do this without I just didn't feel like I fit into any of those boxes. So I did a Google search, and I was lucky enough to find Assumption's program in health advocacy and also Sarah Lawrence. And I interviewed at both schools, and I found that I was just a better fit with Assumption University. So I decided to attend. It was an online program. I had professors, or Sarah was also my classmate. We had professors that were experts in policy. We had lawyers, we had policy analysts. I mean, Leah can kind of speak in. We had just people with amazing backgrounds as professors. And so we studied the entire healthcare system, which from every angle. I was lucky enough to be placed with Health Advocate X for my practicum experience. We had a little roadblock with COVID, the pandemic. Originally, when I started the program and was going to be going into my practicum, I imagined that I would be in a clinic somewhere getting some client experience, because that is what I actually really needed at the end of everything, was to work with one-on-one with clients or observe someone else working with clients. And I remember the summer before my practicum year began, I reached out to Leah and Mary Ann Biedick, our wonderful practicum advisor, going, what do we do with me? I'm on the West Coast. You guys are on the East Coast. I had this moment of panic of, what am I going to do? And I was lucky enough that Leah and Beth Dropper and Robin, everyone already knew each other, and she did an introduction, and I ended up working with Beth on the inquiry program here at Health Advocate X. And what that is we take phone calls from individuals looking to hire private patient advocates, or they're just looking for resources for their medical concerns. we got all kinds of phone calls, and it gave me this practicum gave me that client experience, but it also gave me a mentor in Beth, the training I needed on how to deal with different medical situations that people were calling in about, and also to expand my resources and my knowledge. So we created a resource list based upon previous calls. Beth and I worked on this project together. And then I took each phone call and came up with more resources. And so, in fact, we had veterans that would call in, and, I would say, oh, okay, well, I can see where there's a gap in our resource list on how to, get them to the right veteran service organization or the VA. So we'll do, a list on that. And then we had someone call from a COVID isolation camp. We didn't even know there were COVID isolation camps and hotels at that point in time, dealing with long-term COVID issues before long-term COVID issues were really out there in the media. So I was just exposed to so many amazing things. I feel like I was really lucky in my practicum placement, and I'm so grateful to Health Advocate X and Beth and Leah and Marianne, our practicum advisor, who has since passed away, and she was so wonderful and enthusiastic. And whenever we felt like as students, what are we doing? Or are we going to be good at this? And she just was so encouraging. So I really wanted to take a moment and mention her. So, and right now, currently, I'm still a student at Assumption University. I'm getting an advanced graduate certificate in special ops. It's a program specific to healthcare concerns for service members, veterans, and their families. I'm loving it. I'm also there's kind of a lot going on. I'm also in a mindfulness teacher training program because I spent a lot of time studying healthcare provider burnout. And I attended mindfulness and healthcare summits. And I thought, wow, this is a wonderful way of helping healthcare providers, because where does good healthcare start? With our providers. And so I'm also doing that. And I'm still trying to designate. I was really excited. A woman approached me. Some of my graduate work has been in pelvic floor health for women and pelvic floor dysfunction. And I was talking to a community member here in Yakima who wants to donate a large amount of money to a university specifically for training pelvic floor physical therapists and would like me to work on the project. So that just happened yesterday. So as you can see, just getting into this world, meeting people from across the country, the leadership in health advocacy has opened this door. Here I am speaking at a conference when 4 years ago, I had no idea I'd be here right now. And I just, like I said, want to thank everyone, my classmates, my professors, my mentors. I just appreciate all of you. And so Sarah is going to speak a little bit on a kind of different practicum experience.
Well, it doesn't necessarily start out all that well, but it ends well. I'm Sarah Morton. I live south of Boston. I spent about 30 years working in the investment management business in different client service roles, helping big investment firms develop presence with global consulting firms. It was a fascinating business. I really enjoyed it, but it was really tough. And I got to the point where I felt like I wanted to get away from it. And at the end of the day, I realized, or at least felt, that I just hadn't ever in my career done anything that benefited anyone. And it was a hole that I wanted to fill. Then my parents got sick and I went through final illnesses with both of them. Then I went through my own health illnesses. And at the end of the day there, I felt that maybe I could help things work better. I saw some things when all of us were being treated that just struck me as not being oriented the right way and not putting the patient at the center of the equation, which is where I think they need to be. So I thought about going back to school. I already had a BA and an MBA, and the idea of going back to school at this advanced age was kind of a big deal because I wasn't really sure mentally that I'd be able to absorb anything, let alone everything that I was going to need to, because this was such a different field for me. But I went ahead, applied to the program at Assumption, got into the program, and immediately took on too much, starting with 2 courses at a time when I should have started with 1. And so I had to drop 1, and then that put me out of whack with things. And then I decided that I had started a new job working for a foundation, helping a woman give her money away before she died. And it was very intense and very stressful. And I thought, I'm working for these people. I need to get this under my belt. I should back off school for a bit. So I did, and then went back full bore in 2019 and did 2 courses a semester till I was done this past May. So last year, coming into the final year in the practicum, unlike Jenny, I really wasn't aware of what I was going to need to do for a practicum. And so school started, and Marianne was very encouraging and kept coming up with ideas. And I kept thinking, I really don't want to start my own business. I don't want to do that. I need to find something else that's going to work. And here I am with this really deep client service background. This should work, but it's a completely different field. And is anybody going to think that I have any credibility there? So between Marianne Biedick and Christine Sawicki, we came up with something at CVS Corporate, which is where Christine, who was another one of our professors, worked. And the project was around a cancer support program set of metrics. And it sounded really interesting, and the people were brilliant. And after 2 days, I knew that it was going to be a disaster. It just was not a fit for me at all. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what they wanted me to do. And I had no idea how to even get started. And no matter what questions I asked, I was so in the dark that I was really struggling. And so I decided that the best thing I could do was fall on the sword, admit that it was a bad fit, ask for forgiveness, and try and find something else that would work for me. So that was really uncomfortable. And the day that I had to call my advisor at CVS and tell her, who coincidentally, her name was Sarah too, and tell her that I was leaving because I just didn't think I could do anything that would help her. It was a tough day, but at the end of the day, I was really happy that I'd had the guts to do that. And stepping back and regrouping, I thought, okay, what's a thing I can do here that'll make some sense? And what I came up with was talking to women around the country, some MDs, some RNs, who had been in advocacy for a while and who knew the lay of the land. So I met Beth then. I met doctors in Boston, Heidi Kummer, Stacy Batista, and then I met Brita Lundberg. And Brita and I discovered pretty quickly that we shared an interest in being able to provide advocacy services for people who couldn't pay for them. So Brita and I basically created a public charity to work with that underserved population. And it was just a great project, really interesting. And I got to learn an awful lot. Did it put me in the field working with people? No. Did it put me in the position of learning a ton about something I didn't know anything about? Yes. So at the end of the day, it was a really successful project. The one downside of it was that we got to the end of it and Brita was really too busy to launch the thing and have it go. So that was a frustration for me. But at the same time, I was offered an opportunity to do a little consulting work for Health Advocate X, who always sort of seems to ride in and save the day. And I've had a wonderful chunk of time there working on all sorts of different things, from this conference to business strategies, and it's been wonderful. And on Monday, I'm starting a job with Pinnacle Care, in essence, doing client service in the healthcare business. So I guess at the end of the day, I feel that you can be old, educated in completely different areas, and if you've got the guts and the stick-to-itiveness, you can make a transition into a completely different field and be successful. And by the way, I sat for and took the BCPA in the spring as well. And Jenny and I struggled through that together and passed it together. So it's been great. I look back and I think about a year ago when I didn't know very many people in the room, and how now I just know a ton of people. And it's been a wonderful experience. And Assumption has certainly been central to it. So that's about it for me.
That's awesome. And we're grateful, obviously, to both of you. And I think it's just great what you've been able to do, and will be really interesting to see where you go and where all of these experiences will launch you into the future. So now we're able to take questions from the audience. I think there are some participants here on Zoom, and there are also probably some folks on Whova. So now is your time to ask questions if you want to go ahead and put them in the chat. So I have a question for you both, which is, if you, knowing what you know now, if you were to do it all over again, how or what would you have done differently in setting up your practicum?
I'll take that one, since I'm the obvious idiot who didn't bother to read the syllabus beforehand. I think I would have paid more attention to the syllabus and asked a lot of questions sooner.
I mean, yeah, I would not change my process because like I did kind of look, Sarah.
Of course you did. We didn't even know each other then.
I know. And I think that's been the most beautiful part of that year too, is, just the friendships with my classmates. There were 4 of us in that practicum group, and just kind of forming the bond of going through the pandemic together, our different practicum experiences, and really supporting one another as students. I think there were times we were all like, what are we doing with our lives? And being able to everyone had their own unique talents in their own unique areas. And it was so amazing to watch what my classmates could do.
Is there any advice that you would give to people who will be putting together their practicums or internships?
Gosh, be as broad in your thinking as you can possibly be, because I think ultimately the more different exposure to different areas you can get, the better off you're going to be, because it gives you then an opportunity to really choose something that's a very good fit for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Jenny?
Yeah, I would kind of say the same thing. I mean, a lot of us want to go specifically into an area we're completely passionate about. And I do think that's a good idea, but I'm really grateful I didn't do that, that I was able to take phone calls from a broad medical concerns, billing issues. It gave me experience in a lot of areas and questions that I really didn't know the answer to. And so thankful that I had the experience to even research those questions, and then actually network with other professional health advocates across the country. I would call and ask them for advice from for those phone calls. And I think that's the key piece too, is reaching out to professional advocates across the country when you have questions as a student.
So we have a question from Anna Brunt. Jenny, how did you find students and professionals to connect with when you were across the country from Assumption? She's in New Mexico with a lot of classmates in Massachusetts.
All right. Well, we did, luckily, our professors set up Zoom sessions, and that helped a lot. And then we actually set up our own text group, I think, Sarah, correct? And I think, met a couple times over Zoom separately just to get to know one another. As far as connecting with professional advocates, I just took it upon myself. I went to the Health Advocate X directory And I started going down. And in fact, before I started my special ops program at Assumption, I found Adrienne Coward. She owns Monarch Patient Advocates in Texas, and she's an Army veteran, a nurse, and now she's doing private patient advocacy. And I called her and I said, will you be my mentor as I go through this program? Because I don't know a lot about, the VA system, the DoD healthcare system. And she was like, absolutely. So I kind of was able to find this woman that was already doing the work, and just putting myself out there. And there's so many other advocates I've met that I haven't had time to reconnect with.
I just wanted to chime in as Jenny's mentor through the practicum, I think, and Sarah too, they were willing to be bold. I mean, Jenny was taking calls from people all across the country. And you also, Jenny, had some experience in the insurance industry, which was, I think, really helpful. But there were just calls, like crazy calls. And sometimes she would take them and say, I'll get back to you. And we would then, kind of have a conversation. But I think you have to be willing in your practicums to be bold and do things you might not have thought you could.
Be uncomfortable. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to be said for putting yourself out there and taking the risk. And, the worst thing you can do is say, I don't know. But the best thing you can say is, I don't know, but I'll get back to you, and then do that. So you have an opportunity to learn something and you've helped someone solve a problem. So all good in the end.
Yeah, a lot of the callers were just surprised we even called back the first time, let alone took the time for me to say, I'm really not sure. I'm going to go figure out this problem for you and I'm going to call you back. And they were just like, you will, and they were just so grateful for the assistance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a question in the chat from Melina Houston about what are the ranges of types of practicum opportunities that are possible. And I don't know if anybody, if you two want to answer that, or if Leo wants to come in.
I would love for Leah to come in on this question.
Well, and this is where I would say, I know we're speaking kind of assumption specific, and Melina's question is as well, since she's enrolled in our program. For transparency here, that's kind of where the question's coming from. But I think this is an opportunity to have a broader discussion for everyone who's here, not to just be assumption specific. And that is to say that we do need practicum opportunities, experiential learning opportunities, whether we call them a practicum or an internship. I mean, we could debate those terms. The point is to give people a chance to network and learn from the capable and really generous advocates that are out there in the community who want to share their school of hard knocks learning through this industry around what to do. So to answer the question, we really look for goodness of fit between what the person's interests are with who would be who would have some expertise in that, who would have some experience with that, so that a student, a mentee, could then really make meaning and find some purpose in that connection. And I know that's how I think about it, and therefore that's how Assumption thinks about it in terms of when we network with our colleagues there. And I know as well that Robin and Beth share that philosophy, as well as Health Advocate X has been so invested in thinking about how do we help people who want to advance in this space do so with some scaffolding. And one way to do that is through a professional program, but there are other ways to do that as well, which is why you heard lots of references in the conference about the work that NAC is doing, and AFA, and all of the organizations. Most of the organizations are trying to find a way to really be supportive functionally, not just emotionally. And I also can share, I think fairly, that we have the organizations that are collaborating are wanting to do so in the service of framing out experiential learning opportunities for the community, however they identify as students of, in this space, or students of Assumption, or of Sarah Lawrence, or of Michigan, wherever. And so so there's a breadth of opportunities, because it's quote limited to what your interests are. It's limited, which is broad. It's limited to how we can network to help you find mentors who share those interests. Well, you've met a lot of the community here at the conference. So there's a great width of potential for experiential opportunities. Now, having said that, that might sound too broad and too loose, and it might be a chug and plug kind of. Sarah's experience was more complicated than any of us wanted. It was also complicated by the 2020 COVID
pandemic. Yeah.
I mean, as well. So again, that is why we're trying to take some initiative as some of the leaders in this space to bushwhack our way through a path that makes more sense, is more accessible to students of all kinds.
Right. And I think that
there's so Assumption has and other programs have their requirements that Jenny had to meet so many hours, but Health Advocate X also had what we expected out of the students, so that it's a give and take, because it is essentially volunteer hours that we're using. So, and Jenny actually presented to our board last week about her program. So there is a give and take. There's an expectation from organizations. So
yeah, and I would say, and Sarita put in the chat, is there an opportunity for other people who are not involved in an educational program to do experiential learning or internships? And I think, one of the things that is an opportunity and a challenge is that a lot of this has not been done before. So we are innovating in the field. We do believe that experiential learning is really important, and any practicum or internship or experiential learning puts a bit of a burden on the host organization, the mentor, and that's hours and financial resources that are diverted to make sure that the experience for the student is, a robust one. And so I would just say that we're working with Assumption University to identify appropriate practicum host organizations and people that can meet the needs of the students and structure it in a way that the student experience will meet the needs also of the host and mentor. So we'll be working on that, and it might not be perfect, but we will be hopefully building something that can be innovated and iterated for increased opportunity on both ends of the spectrum. So, because in the end, we all want the same thing, which is we want people to be successfully going into and staying in the field of health advocacy. It's needed, that role is needed. And so the question is, how do we continue to reinforce what we all want? And, we're committed to working on that. Absolutely.
And I would just add that even though it's, Assumption is doing a lot of the partnering around framing what this stuff looks like, it's not only in the service of meeting our academic requirements as a degree granting institution. The expectation is that what we build, how we frame it, would be the the skeleton of what students of all types could then
The model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the model. Exactly. Thank you.
Exactly. And so we'll be partnering on that in a program called Pathways, actually, and the whole idea behind that is to show a clear pathway for people to on-ramp into health advocacy successfully and continue on that path. So we're really grateful to Assumption University for stepping up and making a commitment to continue to work on that with us. It's great. Any other questions? I don't think I see any other questions in the chat. Let's see. Is that program one that advocates who aren't part of an academic program will be able to take part in? So Melina, I don't have an answer to that question yet, because we are still we're flying the plane as we're building it. So I don't know. You know, there are limited amount of organizations and mentors out there, and we're still in the process of identifying them. So stay tuned.
And we have, just so you know, Melina, you probably know this, but we have a current Assumption Masters in Health Advocacy student working as well with me on the inquiry program. Be great to have more, and we know there are more in the pipeline, but there will come a time when this inquiry program won't be the appropriate, you know, program for every single student. So we do want to find other organizations to be able to do this. So.
And we have heard from, you know, we've already started to talk to other organizations who are interested in doing that. So stay tuned. Stay tuned.
NAC does have, though, a mentoring program that it's trying to make available already. So
good. Okay.
They're I believe it's available on their website. There's an opportunity.
There's two different. They have for brand new advocates, they have a webinar series, and then for more experienced, you can work with an advocate. There is a, you know, most professions who have mentors, the mentors are paid. So we're because we're just starting out, we're trying to figure out that, and maybe our pathways talks will get there. But I think NAC has a way they, you know, I don't know, they somehow give them a discount, or they somehow give the mentor a reason why they would want to do that, because it takes a lot of time. It's like an intern. So.
Right. And one of the expectations, though, as you heard, is that that there's a contribution made to the hosting agency, what, you know, the host, so that, you know, it's more of a bartering system right now. And again, there are advantages, disadvantages. You want to make sure there's some fairness, there's some standards, there's some equity there, all the, you know, those kinds of questions. And we've been negotiating that in an idiosyncratic way. We want to do it more as a framework now. And quite frankly, we needed this community to enjoy and savor the conference that we've been enjoying first before we could take up the work of the pathways.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, let's stay in touch. You can join Health Advocate X as a free community member. You can follow us. We have a lot of free events and activities, as well as networking. I know a lot of students have participated in that. Next networking event that we have is December the 2nd, and the next community conversation, which is focused on COVID and how to apply whatever the topic is in a health advocacy sense. Those are free and open to the public. That's on November 15th. And you can find all that information actually at the healthadvocatex.org website under our events. So that's how you find that out. Oh, thanks, Ash, for throwing that into the chat. So great to see everyone. Thank you so much, Jenny and Sarah, for sharing your paths and learnings. Very, very helpful. And I hope everybody has a great rest of your weekend. Thank you so much, Leah.
Jenny and Sarah, is it okay if people reach out to you? The student.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Students on the call. Okay, great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Leah.